Thus, my sister-in-law, Steffi, a 26-year-old woman, and I share a considerable history as we attended high school together. She had a tendency to be quite the bully, and for some reason, I became one of her preferred targets. I was a quintessential nerd during my high school years, and my physical appearance only exacerbated my situation. I was extremely thin and had braces, which were essentially the source of much distress for me. I was the epitome of the stereotypical nerdy girl portrayed in teenage high school films, where they undergo a transformation once they remove their glasses. However, in my case, it was the removal of my braces that was necessary, and regrettably, my metamorphosis did not occur until I reached college. Fortunately, I have improved my appearance significantly since then, as I have gained weight and had my braces removed prior to commencing college. Not that there's anything wrong with the way I looked before, but right now, I'm just a lot less prone to getting bullied by people. That's all. Anyway, I met my husband Andy at a college party a couple of years ago when I was in my third year of college. He was 3 years older than me and was the DJ there. That used to be his part-time job before, and I guess it was meant to be because I got really drunk at that party. He offered to drive me home because my apartment was really far away, and nobody was ready to take me home since I was absolutely wasted. He was nice enough to take me home and even scribbled his phone number on the back of my hand and told me that I could call him because he liked me. The next day, I woke up with a terrible hangover, but I knew that I had found a really special guy. I called him and asked him out on a date, and that was it. We connected really well on the very first date, and I knew that I had found the one. But the only issue was his sister because he was telling me about his family on the very first date. We had made that connection instantly because we were talking about our families, and he told me that he had a sister named Steffi. Then, when I joked about how I had a bully in high school with the same name, he told me with a very serious face that it might have been his sister because she did have a few behavioral problems when she was in school. Then he told me the name of the high school that she attended, and we realized that his sister was actually my high school bully. It was kind of awkward, but I was not going to let that get in the way of whatever we had. So, I told him that it was no big deal because I liked him and not his sister, so she had nothing to do with any of this. He agreed. After dating for 3 months, we decided that we were going to introduce each other to our families. While it was relatively easy for me to introduce him to my family, it was kind of difficult and awkward for him because he knew that his sister and I did not have the best relationship. The first time that I had dinner with his family, I was very nervous, mostly because of Steffi. But it actually didn't go that badly. His parents were really warm and kind to me, and Steffi was kind of cold and aloof. But that was still better than the way that she used to treat me back in high school. I actually preferred this new version of her because this was much less trouble to deal with. So, she didn't talk to me much and kept our interaction to a minimum, but I counted that as a win because this meant that I would not have to talk to her, and we could just ignore each other and let it go. I'm quite fortunate because that is how things have been with us for the past couple of years. I have not had to interact with her much, and neither has she expressed any interest in becoming friends with me. Even when Andy and I got married 2 years ago, she only spoke to me as much as was required of her, and that was it. So, I would say that she and I are not close at all, and both of us prefer it to be that way because after the way that she treated me in high school, I don't think I would want to be friends with somebody like her anyway. And it's not like Andy has a problem with this either because he is well aware of how mean his sister is capable of being. So, he does not mind the fact that the two of us don't talk. He knows that I have not forgiven her for the way she ruined my high school life because she has never shown me that she is sorry. So, I can't exactly forgive somebody who's not even sorry, and he understands that and respects it. But he and Steffi have a normal sibling relationship like most other people do, and I don't mind that because I know that he does not see Steffi the same way that I see her. I am completely fine with that, and it has also been a really long time since high school ended. I don't want to tell my husband not to talk to his sister and create drama out of nothing because she and I are civil now, and that's all that is necessary. So, everything is good in the family, and I got used to it, honestly. It came as a massive shock to me when a few weeks ago, Steffi reached out to me to ask me if I would be willing to accompany her on her bachelorette trip to the Greek islands. And she did not just ask me casually on the phone. She actually invited me over for lunch, and even though I was skeptical about it at first, Andy was the one who told me to give it a chance. So, I went out to lunch with her, and that's where she asked me. She was really nice to me during that lunch, and even afterward. She finally apologized and addressed the history that we had together instead of pretending like it was non-existent. It was quite shocking for me because I had never expected Steffi to own up to the fact that she had bullied me relentlessly when we were together in high school. And when it finally happened, I had absolutely no idea how to react to it. She told me that she was sorry about the way that she had treated me back then and told me that she was just being a total brat and she realized her mistake way too late. She also mentioned that the reason she had never addressed it even after I started dating her brother was because she felt awkward about bringing up things from the past and did not know how to face me after everything that she had put me through back when we were teenagers. While talking about all these things, she even threw in some tears to make it seem very genuine, and I, being the gullible emotional fool that I am, fell for all of it, hook, line, and sinker. I told her that I forgave her and that it was all in the past anyway because now I did not have any issues with her since we all were adults here, and we could deal with it like we were meant to and just have a couple of drinks together and forget about it. She seemed happy about it, and we ended that lunch on a good note. She asked me to come with her and join her and her friends on their bachelor trip to the islands because she wanted to make up for lost time and really make me feel like I was her friend. Initially, I was kind of hesitant to agree to it, but she really talked me into it, and eventually, I just agreed because I thought that it would be a fun experience and it would really help me build a relationship with Stephanie because I was sick of having tension with her anytime we were in the same room. So, after a lot of deliberation, I decided to say yes because I was willing to move on from the past and give our relationship a new and fresh start, and there was no better way to do it than to go on a trip and just let our hair down. That was a couple of weeks ago, and after that, Stephanie and I remained in touch. She was getting married next month, and we were going to leave for the trip at the beginning of this week, but it did not happen because of a little stunt that she decided to pull at the airport. She thought that she could trick me into paying for the entire trip by springing the news on me at the airport so that I would not be able to back out. But little did she know that I had absolutely no qualms about ditching them and going back home because, unlike her, I did not care about what her friends thought of me or even what she thought of me if I'm being very honest. We got there about an hour before our flight was scheduled to leave, and we were all just chatting. But then Steffi said that she wanted to get coffee and asked me to come with her, so I did. When we were at the counter, she told me really casually, "Oh, by the way, I hope that all your cards work internationally because otherwise, you will have a really difficult time paying for stuff." I told her that I was going to be carrying cash for all the souvenirs and knickknacks that I wanted to buy, and then she told me that she meant more like the hotel rooms and food that we were going to eat, and even the flight tickets because I would have to reimburse her for all of that. I did not know what she was talking about because we had not discussed this before that point in time, and half an hour before our flight was supposed to take off was really not the right time for this discussion. She was telling me all of this in a really casual tone. So I asked her if she expected me to pay for myself throughout this entire trip. Then she told me not just yourself, but for everybody on the trip, all of my friends and I. I thought you were going to be paying for this entire thing and sponsoring it, which is why I picked such an expensive destination since I know that you can afford it. Is that going to be a problem? I still remember the exact words that she said, and I can even hear it in the tone because she was saying it like it was the most obvious thing in the world, even though we had never discussed it and I had never agreed to any of that. I asked her if she was serious, and she told me that she had obviously expected me to pay for all of this, and she would be forced to think of me as a really stingy miser because I was the person with the biggest paycheck that she knew of, and she could not think of one single reason why I would say no to sponsoring the trip. I could come up with more than a couple of reasons. The first being that I never agreed to any of this, and she never even asked me if I would be okay with it. So I don't understand why she would assume something like this. And even though it was true that I earned more than most people that she knew, since I am the VP of a moderately large-scale firm, I still did not think that it was an obligation for me to sponsor her trip, especially because we were still building a relationship. We were not at that point yet, and I was definitely not going to even consider paying for a holiday for a bunch of women that I didn't even know. And more importantly, this is my money and my choice, so she could think of me as a miser or a stingy person, but it would not matter to me because I was not going to spend an exorbitant amount of money on a trip that I did not even organize and on a bunch of people that I didn't even know or like. So, after a while of just standing there while she was getting coffee, I decided to walk back to where everybody was sitting, grab my stuff, and just leave because this was ridiculous, and I did not want to create a scene in a public space. So I decided to leave quietly. Stephanie chased after me with her coffee, and even her friends tried to ask me what was wrong, but I did not think that it was important to tell them anything. So I just walked out of the airport and got into the first cab that I could find before they got to me. As soon as I was in the cab, I decided to block Stephanie so that she would not be able to contact me and annoy me, and the next thing that I did was that I called Andy up to let him know what had happened. I actually felt pretty bad for him because he had been very excited about the fact that his sister and I were finally getting along. And I thought that this trip was going to improve our relationship, but clearly, both of us had been very wrong about everything. When I called him and told him what Steffi had tried to do, he was even more outraged than I was and told me that this was unacceptable behavior, and he was going to call his parents up immediately and talk to them about it. I guess he was far more disappointed in his sister's behavior than I have been because I already knew that she was a terrible person, and I was not very surprised at this turn of events. But I think maybe Andy and his parents had been expecting a little more from her, and she had really let them down. And I think that is what really screwed things up for her after that call, because once they knew what she had tried to pull, they were all incredibly pissed. Andy did not speak to her directly, but I could tell that he was not going to let this go because it was pretty insulting to me, and he was really just disappointed with his sister. Once I came back home from the airport, Andy told me that I did not need to speak to Steffi anymore, but I did not have to be told twice since I did not want anything to do with her anyway. I didn't hear from anybody from his family for the rest of the day, not even his parents, but I knew that he was on the phone with them on and off throughout the day. Tempers were running high that day, so I chose not to talk to anybody about it because I knew that everybody was already feeling upset about things, and I did not want to add to it. So I kept quiet and waited for the storm to subside. 2 days passed and nothing happened, but I did speak to my in-laws during that time, and they told me how sorry they were about the way that Steffi had treated me. But I told them it was no big deal because it wasn't exactly their fault. I had seen the way that they had raised their son, so I knew that the parenting was not the problem, and if there was anybody to blame for how Steffi turned out, then it was just herself. Andy and I were also back to normal pretty quickly after that. I did not ask him about any of the consequences that Steffi would have to face for her actions because I was just not interested in any of that. All I knew was that I did not have to interact with her anymore, and that was enough for me. But then, after 2 days of the incident, I got to know that the wedding was canceled, and her fiancé had left her, and that was an indirect consequence of what she had done to me. When Andy and I came back home from work that day, he told me that Steffi was blaming our family for breaking up her and her fiancé, and I was really confused as to how that was even logical because we had not spoken to her after that incident at the airport. However, apparently, this had actually happened because after that incident, once Andy had told his parents what Steffi had tried to do at the airport, they called her up and told her to apologize to me. But she did not even think that she had done anything wrong and instead started telling her parents that I was rude and stingy, and she was glad that I left. So, her parents got really upset, and they told her that they would no longer be paying for the wedding, and she could find somebody else to fund her extravagant event. Now, she tried to make it seem like she did not care, but it would be a huge trouble for her to cover all the expenses of the wedding herself since she had just quit her job and started her own business a couple of months ago, and they had not broken even yet. So, paying for everything herself was out of the question. In spite of knowing that she tried to make it seem like she did not care about any of it because she did not want to apologize to me or even acknowledge that she screwed up, and the day of the wedding was just a few weeks away since it's literally just next month. So, this is a bit of an emergency situation for her right now. And from what Andy told me, after that conversation with her parents, she decided to talk to her fiancé and let him know that her parents would no longer be covering the expenses for the wedding, so she expected him to take over. I think that's what led to a huge fight between the two of them because it was obviously really unfair of her to kind of just spring it on him with barely a few weeks to go for the wedding. So, they got into a fight, and that's how the wedding got canceled. Once I knew the whole story from Randy, I asked him how he got to know about all of this, and he told me too. After the fight with her fiancé, Steffi showed up at their parents' house and fought with them as well and had been blaming them and me for what happened. She had mostly just been blaming me, which I think is really unfair because I didn't even have anything to do with this situation. She said that because of me, first she had to cancel her trip with her girlfriends because I refused to pay up, and now she was going to have to cancel her entire wedding, and her fiancé was probably going to break up with her because she did not see any other way out of this. The trip thing, I do not agree with in the slightest because there had been absolutely no discussion about me paying for anything. so it was stupid of her to expect anything from me. But I didn't feel kind of bad that her wedding is getting canceled. I feel like I should not have complained to my husband and been so up in arms about the whole thing. I guess I just feel kind of sad for her because it means a lot to me, especially considering everything that's been going on. I've been feeling pretty awful about the whole mess, and seeing posts from staff about betrayal and disappointment hasn't helped at all. It's been 5 whole days since that crazy incident at the airport, and though I've blocked her on all social media, word gets around that she's been sharing all these sad, dramatic quotes. It seems like she's just looking for attention, and whenever someone asks her about the situation, she plays the victim and spills a story that makes her look innocent and me the villain. Initially, I felt somewhat guilty about how her wedding plans fell apart, but now seeing how far she's willing to go to paint me as the bad guy, I've lost all sympathy for her. She's even gone so far as to tell people that while she expected betrayal from me, she never thought her own brother would support such an act or stand by my side through this. She couldn't be more wrong. Her brother really doesn't seem to care about her side of the story or her feelings on top of this. I need to point out that she never once checked if I was okay with or willing to cover the expenses for her and her friends on this trip. It's on her that she had to cancel everything at the last minute and leave the airport, returning home instead of enjoying what was supposed to be a fun trip. However, in her version of events, she claims we had multiple discussions about the trip beforehand, but according to her, I lost my cool at the airport, causing a huge scene and deciding on the spot to bail on the trip, which was a massive slap in the face for her. This left her and all her friends stranded, forcing them to return home and cancel their plans, which was undoubtedly embarrassing and humiliating for her. The way she's spreading these false stories about me is absolutely infuriating. But luckily, most of the relatives she's told these tales to have reached out to me to hear my side of the story because they felt it was out of character for me. This gave me a chance to clear the air and explain what really happened. Thankfully, most people have believed my version of the story. Whatever she's trying to achieve by lying isn't working, and instead of making me look bad, she's just making herself look foolish and untrustworthy. Her brother even mentioned that he wanted to confront her and tell her she can't go around spreading lies about us, but I advised him that there was no need to intervene. Her attempts at tarnishing our reputation are backfiring, and she's only damaging her own image. We might as well let her continue if she chooses to do so. This whole ordeal has been quite draining and a real eye-opener about who she really is. It's disappointing to see someone you once cared about turn into a person who's so eager to distort the truth for their own benefit. But it's also a relief to know that by staying truthful and handling things maturely, I'm maintaining my integrity and keeping the respect of those who matter. Looking back, I can't help but reflect on how bizarre and out of the blue the entire situation was. One minute we were all looking forward to a great trip, and the next everything had spiraled out of control thanks to misunderstandings and misplaced expectations. It's sad how things turned out, but it's also a lesson learned in handling relationships and expectations more carefully in the future. In dealing with such situations, I've realized the importance of clear communication and setting boundaries. It's crucial to make sure that everyone involved understands what's expected of them and what they can expect from others. Miscommunications can lead to disappointments and conflicts that could have been easily avoided. Moreover, this has taught me about the value of surrounding myself with people who appreciate and respect me. Having supportive friends and family who seek to understand before judging is something I cherish deeply. Their support during this challenging time has been indispensable, providing me not just with advice but also with comfort and reassurance. As for her, I truly hope she finds a way to move past this and maybe learn something valuable about honesty and integrity. It's never too late to change and start making better choices. Everyone makes mistakes, but it's how we handle them and what we learn from them that defines us in the end. I remain committed to staying positive and not letting this situation define me or my relationships. Life is too short to dwell on negativity or hold grudges. Moving forward with a clear conscience and a positive outlook is the best path forward. Again, thanks so much for being there and helping me see that I'm not the problem here. Your support has been incredibly important to me, and I'm grateful for it. Here's to better days ahead, free from drama and filled with genuine connections and joy. Update 2. It's been roughly 2 weeks since we got the news that Steffi's wedding was off. Since then, things have taken quite a turn. Steffi started off by spreading negative things about us to her family members, attempting to paint us as the bad guys in her story. But her plan didn't really go as she hoped because most people were skeptical about her side of the story. They ended up coming to me to get the real scoop, and of course, I set the record straight with the actual facts. As days passed, it became clear to everyone what the truth was, and it seemed like Steffi realized her efforts to tarnish our image were futile. We hoped that would be the last of it, but life had more drama in store. Steffi ended up moving back in with her parents. This move came after a breakup with her fiancé, leaving her with no other place to go. The situation was a bit sad, honestly, because her fiancé was a pretty decent guy. He even offered to let her keep the apartment while he would move out, but Steffi couldn't afford the rent by herself, so moving back home was her only option. It's somewhat ironic when you think about it. There was a time when Steffi acted all self-sufficient and even bragged about how she didn't need her parents' money to fund her wedding. She made it seem like she had everything under control, but now with her life seemingly falling apart, the only people she could turn to were her parents, the very people she claimed she didn't need. Despite everything, my in-laws were gracious enough to take her in. This was even after all the unpleasant things she had said and done. But living with them didn't change her much. Steffi continued to badmouth Andy, especially in front of her parents, who are also Andy's parents. This was both awkward and inappropriate given the circumstances. To be honest, Steffi must be one of the most unreasonable people I have ever come across. My in-laws had made it explicitly clear that she was not to speak ill of us or continue with her narrative of us being the antagonists in her twisted story, yet she persisted. She kept trying to sway them against us with her complaints and false accusations. Finally, my in-laws had enough. They laid down an ultimatum. Steffi needed to acknowledge her mistakes and strive to improve her behavior, or they wouldn't allow her to stay any longer. This confrontation obviously angered her greatly. In her frustration, Steffi began messaging Andy, bombarding him with daily reminders of how I supposedly ruined not just her bachelorette trip and her wedding, but her entire life according to her. Her fiancé dumping her, and her parents siding with me were all my fault. Of course, none of this was true. Andy hasn't blocked her yet because she is family, after all, but she's definitely skating on thin ice if she keeps attacking me. I'm quite certain that Andy is going to confront her personally at his parents' house. It seems like Steffi is just lashing out to provoke a reaction and vent her frustrations, but her actions are entirely unacceptable. It's essential for her to start taking responsibility for her own decisions and the outcomes of those decisions. Blaming others is not only immature but also unproductive. It doesn't solve anything or help her move forward in life. Reflecting on this whole situation, it's clear how important it is to handle personal conflicts with maturity when conflicts arise, especially within families. The way we handle them can either mend relationships or damage them further. In Steffi's case, her inability to deal with her issues constructively is only making things worse for herself and straining her relationship with her family even more. Moreover, this experience has shown how valuable honesty and integrity are. By simply telling the truth, we were able to maintain our reputation among family and friends despite Steffi's attempts to smear us. This reinforces the idea that being truthful and transparent often yields the best results even in the face of deceit and manipulation. Well-being are our top priorities. Again, thanks so much for listening and understanding our side of the story. It's comforting to know that when things get tough, we have supportive people around us who can see the truth and stand by us. Here's to hoping for less drama and more positive, genuine relationships in the future. Update 3. So, we did it, and I really just could not take it anymore because she was really taking things too far and saying the most horrible things about me while messaging Andy. She even expected to get away with it because she thought that we would not actively try to get back at her. But unfortunately for her, we are not that nice. She had called me every name in the book and referred to me as jealous and insecure, and had even said that I did not look any better than I did back in high school, which was just straight up lies. She knows I'm very touchy about my appearance and makes it a point to pick on it every time that she can. And it has become very apparent at this point that I also don't even understand why she thinks that I would be jealous of her, because right now my life is a lot better than hers, and she literally has nothing that I would be jealous or insecure of. But anyway, these were the things that she had been texting Andy in an attempt to make us mad, And she succeeded in doing so because earlier this evening we went to my in-laws' house and confronted her because she needed to stop believing that she could say and do absolutely whatever she wanted to, and then we would just allow her to get away with it all the time. We had already spoken to Andy's parents, and they knew what we were here for, so they did not ask many questions and just let us in. Steffi had been sitting in the living room, and she seemed very surprised to see us and actually had the audacity to ask her parents why we were there, as if we were not supposed to be there, like she was the only person allowed to visit her parents. They did not answer, and instead, I took over the conversation and told her that she needed to learn how to keep her mouth shut because I had had enough of her BS and I was not going to tolerate her running her mouth about me anymore. So she needed to stop talking about me to anyone at all, and if she did not do so, then I would make sure that my side of the story went public as well, and that would not end up well for her. She immediately thought of throwing a fit and accusing me of blackmailing her and her family of ambushing her when she was asked to stay quiet and just apologize for everything. She told us that she would not do that and started packing her things and left within an hour because now she knew that she was not welcome here and was going to leave with a friend. I'm positive that she will be back in a couple of weeks because I don't think any friend will allow her to live with them free of cost, and judging by how much of a miser she is, I highly doubt that she will cough up anything when she can go back to her parents and live with them for free. But as of now, we're all free of her, and I would say that I am much better off right now, and I think that everybody would agree with me when I say that.